I mean, like, maybe I'm not, familiar enough with the kind of like quality of like vitriol of like online arguments and stuff like that.
Hey, you have like a flip
Um,
phone.
it's true. I've been outed. But there is, I mean, to go back to the cult comparison, it does feel like there's something slightly different there. I mean, in sort of like traditional religious cultish behavior, right? There's like a group defending itself against some kinds of like, threats to group life, disintegration of group life, and they do that by demonizing some, probably already marginalized part of that group, right? But in social media, I mean, there isn't that same kind of pre-existing group that you're defending. I mean, when you're lashing out against someone as what seems like group behavior, it's almost like, well, let me put it this way. I think that there are moments in group life that are good, right? There are like moments of group life that don't involve demonization and marginalization and vitriol. But the thing with social media posting is because there's no natural group, right? All these groups are sort of built from the ground up by individuals. Like we lack the kind of communal structures that even our grandparents and even our parents had. And so in the absence of those communal structures, we have to like build up something for ourselves that's always in jeopardy, that's always at risk of falling apart. And so it does sort of feel like there's something more almost necessary about that vitriol that's not even true of like cults.
I would advance, though, the possibility that it's like, okay, so if you were a Puritan, burning witches, the larger structures forcing down on you was like, one, you were like a really weird religious minority that was essentially asked to leave England, and two, just the environment. Like it's a horror. It's like they picked the coldest, shittiest place to start a new utopia, and they were just dying like flies constantly. And Native Americans were not happy to see them, so they were they had attacks, and of course they turned on each other, and they're like, we have to purify our ranks. Also, that woman might be undercutting my my medical entrepreneurialism by being a midwife. She's a witch. Blah blah blah. When the CP became really, really ruthless and cruel to each other, they were executing the Rosenbergs. It was HUAC. I mean, they were under attack. I think that's a good point, and there is something unique here. I don't think there's a direct attack, but I do think that these are people who a lot of times are largely experiencing a big mass of downward mobility in American life, particularly for a generation. And the sort of like a new neoliberal order is crushing, and it's not cool or romantic the way like being targeted by the CIA or the cold New England winter is. But I think to say that they aren't under a duress and that duress isn't contributing to it maybe overlooks the fact that the duress that people are experiencing is really vague and very diffuse, and it's this kind of quiet neoliberal. I mean, like our entire lives are like a lot of them are professionals too. Like the amount of authority that like HR has over people. I think it's harder to pinpoint the kind of the pressures or the factors in people's misery are, because it's like it's this big kind of unruly new political, social, economic order, and that's not as obvious as McCarthy or a cold New England winter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't saying that like duress is not involved. It just sort of seems like even in any group, there are benefits to being part of actual real life groups. And it sort of seems like in a lot of online, communities, in scare quotes, you get all the negative aspects of group life, but none of the sort of like positive benefits of group life.
Yeah. I mean, the way I think about it is, so let's use a very awkward metaphor, like political organizing, creating a political movement, being part of a political movement. It's like building a ship. So you're going to get in the water and you're going to go to a new place, a new place that's better than this place. And the way you build a ship is everybody gets together and you build a ship, and you learn how to do it by doing it. Like you learn how to sand a keel and stand up the mast and all that stuff. And the internet is this lure to tell people, hey, we'll teach you how to build a ship. And people go on there thinking, thank God, I'm going to learn how to build a ship. There's no shipyards in my town. This is a way for me to do this. But what you're actually learning is how to build a ship in a bottle. And then when it's time for everybody to get off the internet and come together, instead of having the corpus of knowledge to actually take some wood and build a ship, they've all just got their individual ship in a bottle, which will get them precisely nowhere. And that's because the frictionless plane of online does not allow you to incorporate the feedback loop of real world experience into your understanding. And that means that you will never be able to translate it to other people, because it doesn't have a common referent way that experientially based understanding of politics does. It's only a singular referent of you and your particular encounter on the internet.
I would argue as well too that there's something to the fact that like all of the book recommendations and things like that, like speaking of experience, they tend to be like theory or like like a neoliberal hucksters like Robin DiAngelo or something like that. They're all sort of how-tos or theory. They are rarely history, and they are almost never memoir, which seems really essential to me. Then I mean, it just seems like why isn't that like a really integral part of things? Like we have people telling you their stories. I mean, again, I don't know why. Maybe I should do an event or something on Vivian Gornick's Romance of American Communism. But like there are all of these people that recorded their experiences, and it's actually kind of like insane when you're like, well, this already happened. If we just read this, we'd be like, oh, this is that thing. Let's not do that. Let's not repeat that problem, because there are people there who will tell you what things mean on the ground. And instead, I think people sort of engage in this kind of like cryptography where they like read theory, or even the histories they do read, they tend to be sort of like, like the Russophiles or Tankies or something, and they think that like, they're gonna find the secret message and be able to repeat it. It's like, you live in America in 2020. At the very least, maybe like read actual accounts from like 19th century like organizers or something like that. But they gravitate towards how-to stuff and workshop stuff and theory and grand historical narratives of countries that have nothing to do, that don't even have any comparison. Like they're not reading about like, the development of the British welfare state. It's like all like Russia, China, things like that. Like it seems like what they want is the most exotic and impersonal approach to politics possible, which I think is backwards.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a really interesting point, because what you get in history is very much opposed to the kind of like good, like very clear good bad discourse you get online. You get a mess of like moral ambivalence, and then two, you get,
as put it, Stalin made a number of errors.
and you also get distance. You get to experience something that's like not your reality as a way of better understanding your reality. So you get that sort of distance and sort of understanding that things could be differently.